All right, we just made a tree, but we can do a lot better with honestly not that much more work. So let's open a new Blender file. Once again, in our outliner, let's get rid of the lights and the cube and the camera, all things we do not need right now. Let's create a more cool, realistic looking tree. So I'm going to Shift A, I'm going to add a mesh, and I'm going to add a cylinder again. This cylinder, once again, is going to act as kind of the trunk of the tree. Once again, I'm going to open this context menu, and let's slim down the vertices. Let's go, I don't know, what does 12 look like? Let's go 16, whatever. All right, we've got a lovely cylinder. Now what I want to do is I want to click on the cylinder and I want to scale it again, right? So how do I scale it? Well, I press S and I'm going to scale it in the Z direction, the up-down direction, if you will. And I'm going to, I don't know, zoom out a little bit. I'm going to stretch this up. Something like that. And I'm going to move it by pressing G and pressing Z. So I can just move it in that up-down location, that Z direction. All right, so I've got a much taller looking tree. However, trees usually aren't completely straight. That's ridiculous. And trees aren't perfectly uniform cylinders. So let's change that. Let's get a little advanced here. Right now we've been working in object mode. Maybe I'll change this to trunk, sorry. Right now we've been working in this thing called object mode, which we can kind of modify this mesh a little bit, but we can't really change the overlying geometry of this shape. If you press tab on your keyboard, you will enter edit mode. You can see edit mode right there. So you have object mode and you have edit mode. So I want you to enter edit mode, and this is a little bit more of a confusing mode because this is really where all the magic happens once you're editing your meshes. In edit mode, you have three different settings. 1, 2, 3. The first one lets you select individual vertices on your mesh. So see these little dots? The second mode is edge select. That lets you select the lines. It lets you select the edges of your mesh. And the third select mode is face select. That lets you select entire faces. More importantly, you can cycle through these modes just by pressing 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard. So 1 for vertex, 2 for edge, 3 for face. You need to know this because I want us to be in face select mode, so number 3, so that I can click on the very top face of this tree. And the beautiful thing about being able to select just a particular face, specifically the top one, is I can scale this particular face without affecting the entire mesh. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I press S to scale, I can make that face smaller, and if I really exaggerate it, I don't want to make it this small, but I could really exaggerate it, and you can see that this perfect cylinder now becomes narrow and sharp at the top. So much like a tree doesn't have uniform width from top to bottom, I could scale it just to give it a little bit of flavor, so that my tree is thicker at the base and it is skinnier at the top. And how much you want to scale at is completely up to you. That's the beautiful thing of this course. All of our models are going to look a little different, which is makes marking quite interesting, selfishly for me. Okay, so that's a very simple thing, and it did add quite a nice touch to our model. What else could we do? Well, apart from tree trunks not being perfectly uniform from top to bottom, they're also not perfectly straight, right? This is a perfectly straight up and down vertical tree trunk. I want to introduce probably the most important thing you can ever do, and the most important tool that you will use is the loop cut. So make sure we're still in edit mode, and you're going to hold down Control and press R. Once you do that, you should see this yellow ring at the center of your mesh. This makes a loop cut. Now, I want to be a little bit fancier here. I want more than just one loop cut. I want a few. So on my mouse wheel, I'm going to scroll up. And now I have 2 loop cuts. Let's give 3 loop cuts. So I'm going to scroll up one more time, and I have 3 loop cuts. And if you move your mouse, I haven't clicked anything. The loop cuts are still there. Now if I press the left mouse button, I give a left click, I could move these loop cuts either closer to the top or closer to the bottom. Almost always just press the right mouse button and it'll just center those loop cuts so that you have an even space between all of them and the tops and bottoms of your mesh. So loop cuts are almost always cosmetically. Don't think of me as actually cutting this mesh with a saw. I've just added loop cuts so that I can change some of the geometry. So you're probably still on face select from earlier. Let's check out the second option, the edge select. And let's go to the very bottom loop cut. And if you zoom in, you can hold Shift and press that middle mouse button, and you can kind of pan down. So I'm not rotating, I'm holding Shift and pressing the middle button and moving my mouse. So I can be zoomed in, and I can kind of go up and down here just like that. So I'm at the very bottom, and I want to select this edge. Now, it might be tedious to select this entire ring because I'd have to go around and click each line. Here's a shortcut. If you want to select this entire ring, just hold Alt on your keyboard and then press left. And sometimes it doesn't always work the first time, but for this simple geometry, it should. Now you have this ring selected, and now I can edit this specific ring. I could press G to move this ring. I could press S to scale this ring. And a new one, I could press R to rotate this ring. So what I want you to do is I want you to move it in either direction to give your tree some bend. I'm going to move it slightly to the right. And then I'm going to rotate it in some direction. It doesn't matter. I could rotate it, counterclockwise. I could rotate it clockwise, just like that. And now you'll see my perfect cylinder has some it's not so perfect anymore. It's got some life to it. It's got some, cool little geometry. I'm going to scroll up to the second loop cut. I'm going to hold Alt. And once again, I'm going to move this loop cut just slightly, just to give it a little bit of flavor. And I'm going to rotate it. And as you can see, it's kind of giving this tree some life, which is pretty cool. Let's go to the very top loop cut, hold Alt, click the ring, move it slightly, rotate it slightly. And if you really want to be fancy, instead of that top face being nice and flush and parallel with the sky, you could select that top ring. You could move it. You could rotate it a bit. And now you've got a much more realistic looking tree trunk. And if you press Tab to go into object mode, this looks like a much more naturally occurring tree. That's much better than the perfect uniform cylinder we started with. Now, because we spent so much precious time making this beautiful trunk, why don't we reuse this mesh to work as branches? So, back in object mode, I'm going to select this trunk, and I'm going to hold Shift and press D. And if I move my mouse, you'll see I have an exact copy. I duplicated this mesh. So I'm just going to press left on my mouse to set it in the scene. And I'm going to scale this down so that it kind of looks like a branch. Now, I need to rotate this branch, so I'm going to press R, and you can see my branch start to rotate. So I'm just going to put it somewhere that looks good. How about right here? Now, I'm going to show you, if you're moving stuff, it's kind of hard to move kind of like you're moving freely here. Like it's hard to kind of line things up sometimes. So what I like to do is I like to press one of these axes buttons. This kind of locks my view and it makes it really easy to move things. So for example, if I'm looking in the X direction, I could just move my tree such that it's perfectly lined up with the Y plane. And then if I press this one, you can see it's a little bit off kiltered here, so I could move it so that it's lined up looking through the X plane. And all I need to do is basically those two adjustments, and that branch sits perfectly in that tree. That's a lot easier than trying to just move it freely in kind of free view mode. That is a very important concept in Blender, is basically using these locks to move stuff. It makes it so much easier. I don't really ever want to see you moving stuff in free mode like that, now that you know that little trick. All right, let's add some leaves. So Shift A, add a mesh. Let's work with something we haven't used yet. Let's use a icosphere. Now an icosphere, if we zoom into it, is a sphere, except it's a sphere that's made out of triangles, like this. So, depending on how your tree is scaled, I have to scale up these leaves. So I'm going to press S. I have to move these leaves up to the top. And there we go. Now it doesn't really look like leaves too much right now, and that's totally okay. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you one more new thing for this video. Back in edit mode, so by pressing tab with my sphere selected, I'm going to finally go on option 1. Press 1 on your keyboard and we'll select the vertices select. Actually, I changed my mind. Let's do face select. Let's go back to option 3, face select. Now I can select any of these faces, and I could theoretically press G to move them. And I might want to do that in some cases, but this does not provide the desired effect. It kind of just stretches everything, and it doesn't look like leaves almost instantly as soon as I move it. However, what I can do is I can press O on my keyboard, and what I've done is I've enabled proportional editing. You'll see this little blue icon light up. Now what happens if I press G is it moves within a set boundary. It moves other parts of the mesh with it. So if I press G, you'll see this little ring pop up. If you scroll up, if you scroll down on your scroll wheel, you can make the ring bigger or smaller. Basically, this is your area that your movement affects. So the bigger it is, the more pieces I'm taking with it. As opposed to the smaller, the less pieces that are coming with it. So this allows you to move things in a much more natural way. So for this tree, I'm trying to make the shape of leaves. So maybe if I just kind of pull it down a little bit, kind of give it a little stretch on one side, and maybe I'll go on the left side or whatever other side, and maybe I'll just kind of stretch that a bit. Just give it a nice little pull. And I kind of got this bushy looking leaf thing going on top, which doesn't look half bad. Now, I'm done, but you're going to continue. And what you're going to do is you're going to add another branch, another one of these guys, and you're going to add some more leaves. This is what I've come up with. So I've got a total of 2 additional branches, and I've got 3 icospheres, which you can either duplicate or you can make from scratch. It's probably good to make it from scratch and go through the process. Just remember, object mode when you're adding meshes, right? And once you edit your mesh, right, if you're in edit mode, which we are to proportional edit, make sure you go back into object mode before you add another mesh. Nothing terrible will go wrong if you don't do that, but just try to remember that. All my branches are secure and tight to my main trunk, as should yours be. And you should have something that looks kind of like this when you're all done. That's a very nice looking tree. A lot better than the first tree we made, and we didn't even have to sweat that hard to make it. And that's what's cool about Blender.